Hey everybody, this is Anthony. Welcome to a new episode of the VR Game Rankings daily vlog series for a brand new week. It is Monday, January 15th, and this is episode 76 of the show. And I do have a handful of news stories to jump into today, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. Okay, so the number one story of the day, this goes back to an article on Engadget on Saturday. Devendra Hardawar wrote an article for Engadget about the Tobii eye tracking, and the title of his article is Tobii Proves That Eye Tracking is VR's Next Killer Feature, and the subtitle is Expect to See It in Every Future VR Headset. Yeah, those are pretty bold predictions by Devendra Hardawar, but if you read his entire article and if you look at some of the sample videos that are provided and some of the screenshots, you kind of get an idea that this eye tracking idea could really be a game changer for VR headsets. And I think this is a relatively exciting development. Now, obviously, we've known about eye tracking for quite some time. In fact, I believe it was at last year's GDC when we really heard a lot about this company Tobii and about the idea of eye tracking, and there were some demonstrations that were shown off and everything looked really cool. Well, Tobii has shown up. They did show up to the CES show, and they had some new demonstrations there, and Devendra Hardawar was one person that was able to sample a bunch of these demos, and he came away from the demos just absolutely incredibly impressed with it. And so what he talked about a number of things here. The first thing that he was talking about was the accuracy in targeting that eye tracking can bring to the situation. Now, in some ways, you could almost see this as cheating, and this is not really legitimate, but it still can be used effectively in a lot of different kind of use cases. But what he was talking about is there was a demo that he tried where you basically have some rocks and you're throwing rocks at these bottles that are maybe like 30 feet, 40 feet away from you. And so when you start off the demo, you're instructed to simply pick up these rocks and try to hit the bottles. Well, you're going to try doing that and you're going to fail miserably, and it's not going to work. And then what they do is they turn on the eye tracking. Now they say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the bottle, focus on the bottle, and then throw the rock. And so then you do that, and bam, you're hitting the bottles every time, smashing the bottles with the rocks. And Devendra was talking about how this was pretty amazing, and it almost gives you like this superhuman ability where you can just target things and have much greater accuracy. So that was an interesting demo that he tried. He talked about another demo where you're basically talking to these two robots, and the robots are making eye contact with you. They look at your eyes, the robots can blink their eyes, and they're sending text messages to you, and they're looking at you and they're talking with you. And he was saying that in this demonstration, the possibilities for interactivity between non-player characters and other real life humans as well in a multiplayer experience is enhanced exponentially by the fact that they have this eye tracking. They can follow your eyes, they can look at you. There's this sense of reality there that is just different, and it's a real game changer. And then the other thing that he talked about is he said that at a certain point they turned on foveated rendering, a demo of foveated rendering, but they didn't tell him about it. And then they asked him later, did you notice when we turned on the foveated rendering? And he was like, no, I didn't notice it at all, which is exactly the way you want it to be. You don't want it to be a situation where you immediately notice that something is different. You want everything to seem normal and everything to seem the same. But what you want to do is you want to take some of that load off the GPU and the CPU in terms of rendering just what you're actually looking at and not wasting a lot of the resources on stuff that you're not paying any attention to. So there were a number of these different demos that he tried out. He came away from the experience really blown away by what he saw. And for him, he was basically saying, look, this is a game changer. Every new VR headset is going to need to have this. This has to happen. And he talked about in the beginning of the article that when you looked at this HTC Vive that had this technology added to it, that it seemed to just fit in with it very unobtrusively, like it just blended in with the headset, like you don't even really notice it whatsoever. Now they do have these sensor rings that go around the perimeter of the lens, and what this does is this is where it tracks your actual eye, and then there is some circuitry, some chips and circuitry that have to go into the actual headset itself. So one of the questions that we have after looking at this article and being jazzed by the possibilities for eye tracking is, how exactly is this technology going to be delivered to us? Now, obviously, Tobii has come out and said that they have plans to have this eye tracking included in future headsets that are yet to be announced, that are going to be coming out sometime down the future. So obviously this will be baked into a lot of future headsets, hopefully. But what about all of us that already have headsets? Is there any hope for us? Well, based on the HTC Vive that they had there could be a possibility. Now, I don't know if the actual ramifications of how much it would cost to do this, if all of that works out, it might not work out. It might not be cost effective where you can actually do this. But there's a possibility that we could ship off our HTC Vive headsets and they could add the sensors to the outside of your lenses, and they could add the circuitry inside your HTC Vive headset, and then they ship the headset back to you. Now, of course, that's going to cost quite a bit of money because you're shipping a very expensive device back and forth, and then they have to do what they have to do to it. So I don't know how feasible that's going to be able to upgrade existing Vive headsets to add this eye tracking, but it could be possible. And then obviously we're looking forward to the release of newer headsets that will have this baked in. But he ended his article with a quote, and I want to read this quote. He says, "Trying Tobii's technology for just 30 minutes has already ruined me for every VR headset without that. I'd call that a success." So that was his ending quote on this topic. And so he basically sees it as an absolute game changer. And I can say from playing From Other Suns recently and being involved in some multiplayer gaming, that the idea of eye tracking and you know, there's so much communication that we make that is nonverbal communication. We make communication with our hands. I'm moving my hands around right now. Obviously, when you move your hands around, you're kind of emphasizing points and stuff like that. But you could be in a situation with another human where they're talking to you and you can dart your eyes away from them. And that kind of lets that other human know that, oh, maybe you're not really interested in this topic because you're not looking at me anymore. There's all kinds of subtle communication that goes on with our eyes and with our mouths and our expressions as well. Eventually we're going to have to track that as well, but the eyes are a big part of it. And I really could see a situation where all kinds of VR related multiplayer games could really take major advantage of eye tracking. And I could kind of see this being the type of thing where it just kind of becomes a snowball effect, where even if this is an add-on and it's not available to everybody, and there is that, you know, there is that situation where you have to get these out there for developers to support it, but how do you get it out there without having compelling software to move people to buy this? But I could see a situation where eye tracking starts to come into the picture and more people are exposed to it, and it just becomes one of these things where it's like, oh, dude, you've got to get eye tracking. You've got to get eye tracking. It's a game changer. And people just start, like, they start adding it on, and it just happens. So I really believe eye tracking could be coming in the very near future. I'm excited about that. I think that, you know, we recently saw, of course, the HTC Vive Pro, and I was kind of disappointed that it didn't have some technology along these lines that could really change things up a little bit and add some extra juice to it. So I am looking for eye tracking. Can't wait till we hear about a headset that has Tobii's technology built in from the ground floor. Okay, Topic number 2 is Microsoft Mixed Reality Fire Sale. Yeah, there appears to be another Microsoft Mixed Reality Fire Sale, but if you go to Microsoft's website, you will not see this. Apparently at Amazon.com, the prices of a number of Microsoft Mixed Reality headsets are very, very low. I saw that the Acer package is $218.99 right now. The Dell, $210.98. The HP, $201. The Lenovo package, $246.99. Now this includes the Microsoft Mixed Reality headset as well as the 2 controllers. So this is a complete package. You could have $211 and you could walk away with the Dell VR package, and that's pretty impressive. In fact, I actually found out about this because someone was watching episode 52 of the VR Game Rankings daily vlog series, the episode where I was talking about the first Microsoft Mixed Reality Fire Sale, where you could get these mixed reality headsets for $199, and left a comment in that episode. Buccaneer, he says, just picked up the Dell visor for $230 off on Amazon. And I saw that comment, and then I went to Amazon and I was looking at the prices of all these other ones. I'm like, wow, this is a real fire sale. Now the thing is, it doesn't appear that these prices are going on anywhere else, so I don't really know what this is all about. And again, it's kind of one of those curious situations where, is this good news? Is this bad news? Is there a huge inventory of these headsets? Did Dell and Acer and HP and Lenovo, did they manufacture a ton of these things, and did they not sell very well, and that's why we're having these occasional fire sales? Or is this just some type of promotional thing? Or are these headsets made cheap enough that they can get away with actually doing this? Maybe they're kind of selling some of these at cost and they're trying to help build the infrastructure of the Microsoft Mixed Reality platform. So not exactly sure what is going on with this, but I can tell you this, that if you do not have a PC VR headset, and if you're looking to get into the PC VR game and you don't have a lot of money to work with, buying that Dell package for $211, not necessarily a bad idea altogether, Now, you do want to be careful here, though, because if you have a large IPD, if you're on either extreme of the IPDs, if you're an outlier, if you have a really small IPD or a really huge IPD, these Microsoft Mixed Reality headsets might be a bad idea, because what I've heard is, and this is especially for larger IPDs, the IPD of these Microsoft Mixed Reality headsets seem to be set around like a 66, 67, 65 kind of range. And if that's your IPD, everything's great. But if it's not your IPD, you could have some trouble with these Microsoft Mixed Reality headsets. So definitely be aware of that. Okay, and the third story that I have for you is one of the things that we haven't really got into too much in this show is about various VR peripherals that could possibly be interesting. Of course, we have the various treadmills that were out there. I remember way before I got my HTC Vive, way before I even pre-ordered my HTC Vive, and we were kind of first hearing about Oculus, and we were first hearing about Steam VR and all these different things. I remember back in those days, there was a lot of talk about the various VR treadmills and all these different kinds of accessories that were going to come into VR to make the experience that much more immersive. And now, it's 2 or 3 years later now, and it seems like a lot of that stuff has kind of fallen off to the wayside. We don't hear too much about VR treadmills as much as we used to. We don't hear a lot of talk about this stuff. But at the Consumer Electronics Show, there was a new product that was shown off that has been drawing some interest in the VR community. And the product is known as Yaw VR, okay? And there is a Kickstarter for Yaw VR. So what is Yaw VR? Yaw VR is basically this portable, well, they call it portable. I don't know exactly how portable it is. But what it is it's a seat that you set up and that you can sit on, and it provides 3 degrees of freedom. So what it does is it provides unlimited 360-degree freedom of movement on the vertical axis and 50 degrees of movement along the horizontal axis. Now, this product is being brought to us by IntelliSense, and they do have a Kickstarter for this project. Now, it's gotten off to a relatively slow start. They have about 28,000 of their $150,000 Kickstarter goal so far. They do have 39 days left, but basically the idea behind this is that if you're playing cockpit games like Eve Valkyrie or Elite Dangerous, or if you're playing various racing games like Project Cars 2 or Dirt Rally or Assetto Corsa, you could possibly use this seat and you can sit in this seat and your experience can be increased exponentially by providing this actual movement while you're playing the game. Now, how much does this thing actually cost? Okay, well, if you pledge $890, you can get a YA VR Early Bird Edition. Now, when I checked before doing this story, there were only 20 of those left, so they don't have a tremendous number of the Early Bird Editions, but it's $890, basically about $900. And when those run out, you can get the standard edition, which is $1,190, basically $1,200. So this is certainly not a cheap product. And if you see the videos on this, one of my biggest concerns with this is that it seems like it can't really handle a very tall person, a heavy person. You know, I just don't know how strong the materials are, because you kind of put it together yourself. It's working great. I mean, they show it in the video. They'd show a guy sitting in it and it's moving around, and he's moving around 360 degrees, and all of that looks good, but the guy isn't like a tall basketball player or an offensive lineman or anything like that. So I think if you're like 5'6" and you weigh like 145 pounds or something like that, you might be good with this thing. But if you are much taller or much heavier, you might have some issues with it. Now, the good news is IntelliSense is planning to design future versions that are specifically targeted towards heavier people, also specifically targeted towards kids. And they're also targeting a version that is going to be a pro version, more of a higher end type version. So this is an interesting thing. I mean, I've talked before about how one of the reasons I don't really get into some of these racing games so much in VR is because you do, and really all the cockpit games really, is there is that tinge of motion sickness that happens. I've been playing Pilot Wings VR. I've been playing Ultra Wings VR on PlayStation VR recently, and I have all of the comfort options turned off as far as like motion sickness, and I'm able to play the game, but there is just this tiny bit of like uneasiness. There's a tiny bit of queasiness. Now, I just kind of power through it and deal with it, and it doesn't really bother me too much. But if I was sitting in a YA VR while playing Ultra Wings, I could imagine that experience being heightened to a much greater degree. The immersion and just buying into the overall experience could be heightened quite significantly. So that would be super cool. And this game is, this hardware product is supposedly going to be compatible with a lot of games that either have a cockpit and you're in a flying type game, flying simulator type game, or you're in a race car. And so it's going to be compatible with a lot of stuff like that. So it looks pretty good. It's interesting. I like to see this stuff. I don't know about the pricing. The pricing is a little bit on the outrageous side. I know that I've mentioned in the past that there are these motion adjusting chairs called D-Box. You can go to the movie theater and you can watch a movie and the chairs kind of move around, and they do have this for home use for people that have the money to afford it, but I believe they run in like the $5,000-$10,000-ish range. But eventually, I've said this before, we're eventually going to get to the point when you think about the experience of getting into a car and driving a car, we are not too far away from being able to deliver that actual experience where it would almost be imperceptible from reality, because we're eventually going to get to photoreal visuals, and we're eventually going to get to the place where you can sit into a real car seat, you can hold a real steering wheel, you can have a real manual shift, and you can have a clutch and all of that, and they're real physical items, and you're sitting in the car and it has motion simulator capabilities, so you feel the inertia, you feel the movement of your car, you feel the forces, and then you have the visuals, and it's going to be indistinguishable from reality. Now, we might be still 5-10 years away, but this is going to happen. That's what's truly incredible and amazing, and it's not going to be too far away that we could actually do this in our own homes if we're willing to spend maybe $5,000 on something like this. Now, this yacht idea is a lot cheaper. I just don't know how durable and how high end it really is. It seems kind of more like an entry level type of situation, but it still does look interesting. Alrighty, well, that's basically going to go ahead and wrap up this show. I don't have a ton of news stories here, but we're going to go ahead and bounce out of here. But that's going to go ahead and do it for episode 76 of the VR Game Rankings Daily Vlog series for Monday, January 15th. And I will, of course, be back tomorrow on Tuesday. See you guys then. Take it easy. Later.